So good evening. It got a bit late here. I just finished editing this video, hopefully did an adequate job. But this video is of a pamphlet that was written by H.T. Koo in 1940, and especially starting after the 7th minute marker is when it starts discussing a major change in Watchmanee's evident practices in September of 1935. But basically, this pamphlet, along with more that I'll be reading, demonstrates a very severe problem of financial corruption in the history of the Lord's Recovery. So I'm going to read a document that is entitled Translation of a Pamphlet, privately circulated by Mr. Wei Tsang Koo at Shanghai, August 1940. And this is the translation, and I have a second translation, and I didn't notice that I had a better printing, and I transcribed this version, which is really hard to read, and then found, someone had given me this, and this is provided by Silas Wu, a professor at Boston University. Now I believe, if he is still alive, I looked up, he is a professor emeritus for Harvard. He also is listed by Dun and Bradstreet as the president of the church in Newton, Massachusetts. So faithful in the local churches, but also clear, to an extent at least, about the corruption with Watchmanee. And yeah, okay. So let me read what I typed up. I noticed that these two translations are slightly different, but they are also, for the most part, they say the same thing. So let me read. Translation of a pamphlet privately circulated. And I already read that. The Little Flock. Mr. Watchmanee is founder of that company of Christians known as those meeting in the Lord's name. He is a Fukianese, 39 years of age, and has 3 brothers and 4 sisters. His talents are exceptional, and during his early student days, he generally stood high in all the examinations. I'm just checking the other translation. While at middle school, he was converted and became very earnest in spiritual things. Within a year, he had led many of his fellow students to the Lord. At this time, practically every spare minute was spent in the study of the scriptures. He also received very much help from Miss Barber, a missionary. In consequence, rapid progress was made in his Christian life. Frequently, he took out with him a zealous band of students to preach the gospel in the surrounding neighborhood. Mr. Nee was also a great reader of English books, especially those advocating separation from the sects. Before long, he established a meeting place in Fuzhou, where he himself preached every Lord's Day. According to his own testimony, before preaching one day, he was reading Psalm 73:25, "Whom have I in heaven but thee? And there is nothing upon earth that I desire besides thee," when the Holy Spirit spoke to his heart, saying, "You have a desire upon earth, so you should give up your attachment to Miss Chang." Mr. Nee's reply to this was, "If thou dost want me to preach in the unreached parts, I am willing to go, but this thing I cannot do." After much heart-searching, however, Mr. Nee complied and was willing to remain unmarried all his days for the work's sake. God thereupon greatly blessed and used him. Nevertheless, in 1934, Mr. Nee and Miss Chang were united in marriage in Hangzhou. After this experience, Mr. Nee devoted himself to Christian literary work and first opened a gospel publishing house at Losingta, Losingta, Fujian. Many books were issued, also later, see below, the magazine Revival, but this continued only a short time. January 1926 saw the commencement of a monthly magazine, The Christian, but soon after, Mr. Nee went to Nanking to give help in the Spiritual Light Publishing Society. The following year, he came to Shanghai to work. A gathering for the breaking of bread was first held at Sister Wang Pei Ching's house, address given, but later premises in Wintei Lane were rented, Mr. Nee living upstairs and the meetings taking place downstairs, Mr. Nee bearing responsibility for all. Since our brother was located in Shanghai, the publishing work continued here under the name of the Gospel Publishing Office. In 1928, when he was 25 years old, the Christians ceased issue in favor of revival. In 1930, the Bible Record began publication, but after the 52nd number, or periodical or volume, after the 52nd number, this and revival both ceased, and the Christian was reissued. In addition to these periodicals, Mr. Nee did much translation work and wrote gospel tracts and sermons. He also compiled in Chinese hymns for the little flock. All this time he was preaching and writing about separation from the churches with striking results. Many Christians left various sects to join the number of his followers so that the meeting room soon became too small to seat all. Next door was rented and the two places thrown into one to accommodate over 200. Mr. Nee continued to go about taking meetings and gained many adherents to his teaching, which was spoken of as, quote, the way, unquote. At the same time, he gained a number of able speakers from the churches, such as Messrs. Li Cheng Xiao, Lu Cheng Sin, Lan Fei Li, and Cheng Kuangyang. Also lady teachers such as Li Yuan Yu, Wang Pei Cheng, etc. And that would be, I believe, Ruth Li and Peace Wang. These all went elsewhere, working on similar lines, so that soon there were thousands of followers and some 100 preachers among them. Within a few years, the Shanghai Hall again needed extension, and further adjoining premises were secured. Thousands of dollars were spent in renovations, and alterations were made to seat 500. In September 1935, Mr. Nee sent a telegram from Chifu to say that he had met the Lord. So he had functioned all that time since the 1920s, but in 1935 he sent a telegram from Chifu to say he had met the Lord, little realizing at the time that he had really been deceived by evil spirits. In Chifu he had received what is called the outpouring of the Spirit, something like an electric shock. On returning to Shanghai, he led the brethren and sisters into a similar experience of power, so that many of them were also deceived, and there began uncontrolled hand-clapping, trembling, jumping about, falling to the ground with loud laughing, while others spoke with tongues, or mourned and cried, sang hymns, and such like, so that the meetings became scenes of much disorder. Mr. Nee also visited Fujian and other places to lead his fellow workers and the rest of the believers into the same experience, so that in nearly every place his followers were seduced by these evil spirits. This was evident from the injurious results. For instance, in Shanghai, one sister threw herself from the 3rd story in an attempt to commit suicide, but in the mercy of God, her life was spared, though she broke her spine. Mr. Nee was then made aware that he had been deceived, so he no longer preached the doctrine of the fullness of the Spirit, nor did he again seek to help others to similar experiences of power. Lest his reputation suffer, however, Mr. Nee never publicly owned his error, but privately rejected it. During the time he was under the influence of this error, he sought to buy land and erect new meeting places, and paid no regard to his former teaching that the church should not seek any earthly estate. It so happened that an elderly lady in the Wintei Lane gathering was ready to part with her property at the corner of Yu Yuan and Kiao Chao roads. The land was worth some $80,000, but she was willing to give half, plus an extra 20% discount on the remainder. She was willing to give also the 2 foreign-style houses on the site. Mr. Nee thereupon sent out an appeal for funds, and $20,000 odd was contributed by the Friends in Shanghai and over $10,000 by the Outport gatherings, making a total of some $32,000. This was paid over, or handed over probably, but shortly afterwards the lady noticed that the documents bore the name of Mr. Nee as owner of the property. She felt dissatisfied, for her offer had been made to the assembly, not to a private individual. She asked Mr. Nee to form a guarantee committee so that the property should be for the sole use of the assembly in perpetuity. Mr. Nee, however, refused, and the project fell through, Mr. Nee returning the deeds and the lady refunding the money. On the evening of the 19th of June, 1937, Mr. Nee rendered an account of the building fund to the assembly. He reported that he had drawn upon it for the following items: 2 broadcasting outfits for $1,000, further sums for the 2 meeting rooms in Shanghai, addresses given, and renovations to all 3 places, also the purchase of many long seats, probably called benches or pews, for the same. Another item was $220 for a journey by air taken by Mr. Nee, a total of over $3,000. It was then that I came to realize that the accounts were not clear. Mr. Nee, while constantly exhorting believers to be straightforward in all financial affairs, was himself careless of funds entrusted to him. To say nothing of the $220, there were items for the meeting room expenses charged to the building fund. How could it be so used, and who gave him that authority? We looked upon Mr. Nee as God's servant and trustworthy, on account of which these monies had been entrusted to him. Still, Mr. Nee was not satisfied, for he later announced that $16,907.57 contributed to the building fund by believers at the outports would now be allotted to other uses. The reason given was that it was not now the will of God to buy land and erect halls. He had, he added, received light, namely that believers should assemble in people's homes, so there was no further use for a building fund. He also rendered an account showing that brethren and sisters in Shanghai had contributed the sum of $23,526.97, which again revealed to me that Mr. Nee was not to be trusted, for from the beginning of 1936 to the end of 1937, according to the figures published weekly in a local sheet, the amount showed a discrepancy of over $3,000. The writer, I assume, of this pamphlet, inquired into the facts, but Mr. Nee's only way was to alter the accounts. These I examined further and discovered an item of $1,200 transferred to Mr. Nee. I was astounded. Mr. Nee knew it was wrong and afterwards refunded the money. At the time, I also reproved him regarding the allotment of outport contributions contrary to the intention of the donors. If these were so used, what was to prevent the misuse also of the monies contributed in Shanghai? Mr. Nee saw my point and gave in. Others requested Mr. Nee to publish a statement of accounts so that the matter could be clear, not only in the sight of God, but also in the eyes of men. So far, however, Mr. Nee has not complied, which is surely strange. Soon his fellow workers disagreed with him over these funds and also wanted them used for various purposes. There was quarreling among the inner circle, resulting in a cessation of the Lord's Day gatherings. In 1937, Mr. Nee bought over 20 mu of land in Changyu and laid out a beautiful garden and built a foreign-style residence with a garage attached. The writer had heard rumors of it, but at first refused to believe them. Mr. Nee taught that Christians are pilgrims on earth and should not invest in worldly estates. I trusted that his teaching and conduct corresponded. Surely he would not do such a thing. One day the writer went to Chengyu and saw for himself. Mr. Nee's name was on all the boundary stones. The Christian brother who was caretaker told me other things, and I could no longer refuse to believe what I had heard. For the land alone, some $10,000 must have been paid, besides which there was the foreign residence and laid-out garden costing several thousands more. On my way back, I thought, well, Of all the gospel preachers in China, surely only one, Mr. Ni, has such a private residence. According to our brother, this was a sign of God's abounding goodness, and by no means for mere carnal enjoyment. I could not but wonder how so much money had come into the hands of a preacher, or if so much money was received, how it could be spent on oneself instead of in the Lord's work, especially when fellow workers had need. In 1938, the sum of $7,000 or more was sent out from England through Mr. Austin Sparks to help Chinese Christian sufferers. To date, no one in Shanghai and its vicinity has received any help from this fund. On the contrary, Mr. Ni has used this money in and around Hankow, taking Christians from the churches to and from the interior, enticing many of them to join the, quote, gatherings. This, too, is worthy of note. In 1939, Mr. Ni returned from a visit to England in close connection with Mr. Sparks' meeting there, and money is regularly remitted from this quarter. On reaching Shanghai, Mr. Ni announced that it was God's will to purchase land, a statement totally at variance with his former one. But Mr. Ni is a clever man. He now says that while the local assembly has no need, the work does have, and therefore in future the purchase of land and erection of halls is the sole responsibility of, quote, the worker. The $30,000 contributed by believers in this land also came under the same control. What is the work? It is the workers. Of the workers, who is the authority and the leader? It is Mr. Ni himself. In other words, the money is in the hands of Mr. Ni, who intends to use it all in his work, for he bears the sole responsibility and permits no one to question it. He has been too clever. As remittances from England continued to come regularly, Mr. Ni established a sort of training college for young workers at an address was given. He also terms it a home of entertainment for workers. He owns a private car, but seems the only preacher thus supplied. This pamphlet is issued at the request of many persons to meet an outside need, namely, lest others be deceived and join themselves to this nonsectarian sect, and so be turned out of the true way. Owing to limitations of space, the question of certain doctrines is not here discussed, but may be dealt with later. Moreover, there is no personal animosity between the writer and Mr. Ni, so for love's sake, one refrains from mentioning certain other matters. Signed and dated Shanghai, August 1940, Ku Hui Tsang. I wonder what the other matters were. Thank you for listening.